Now, as these changes and these developments were happening in the Russian society, what did all these unsatisfactory measures of the government towards its people lead to? What happened as a result of so many problems in the Russian society? Now, Russia was an autocracy. I told you a little while ago that Russia was ruled by the king who was called Tsar Nicholas II. And by autocracy, it means that the king was all-powerful. He had absolute power to bring about any rules and any kind of regulation to rule his people as he wished. Even if the people were not happy with him or his rule, he would not bother to continue his way of ruling. And there was no parliament, which means that people could not elect their government. People did not have any right to elect, to vote for who they wanted them to rule. Hence, the people of Russia started to demand for a constitution where the people were given the right to vote and elect the government, and the elected government would rule the people. So the social democrats and the social revolutionaries, which we just learned about, they demanded along with the people for a constitution. Now, 1904 is very important for Russia because in this year there was this high increase in prices of all products, and as the price went high, the wages went down. So now people did not have enough to buy goods, to buy food, because they did not have enough money. So there was this huge increase and decrease in the wages. Now, as a result of all these problems existing in Russia, workers began to strike in St. Petersburg. I told you St. Petersburg was the capital of the Russian Empire, and it was one of the prominent or important industrial areas where there were a lot of factories and industries. Now, workers from that capital, from the area, from this industrial area, began to call for strikes. And why did they call for strikes? Because they demanded reduction in working hours. They wanted improvement in their system of working. So they said that our long hours of work should be cut down into a shorter one. And increase in wages, they also demanded that their wages be increased and other improvements in their working conditions, like their housing facilities, sanitations, etc. Now, another important event during this 1905 revolution was that now, as these uprising was going on in the capital city of Russia, there was a procession of workers led by Father Gapon. Now, this procession was going towards the Winter Palace, or the palace where the king resided. Now, as the procession went on, of course, they were countered by the forces, the army of the king. Now, as this happened, the army opened fire and began to attack the workers' procession. And in this attack, many people, hundreds of people died and several hundreds wounded. Now, this particular episode in this year is called Bloody Sunday because many people gave up their lives, many people died and were left wounded. As a result of this, strikes were called all over the country. So this particular incident angered many other workers across Russia, and as a result, in response to what happened in Petersburg, the workers from other parts of Russia working in respective industries and factories called for strikes. They stopped going to work and factories were shut down. They demanded for a constitution. They demanded that we all get the right to vote and elect our own government. Now, when all these events were happening, of course, these developments put certain amount of pressure to the ruler, and as a result of this, the ruler or the Tsar formed an elected parliament or Duma. So Duma was an elected parliament which was formed by the Tsar Nicholas II as a result of the events that happened in 1904 and 105, which is called 1905 revolution. Now this Duma was the parliament of Russia, and the king also allowed formation of trade unions and factory committees. Now if you remember, before 1905, forming any political organizations and associations were treated illegal. But now after 1905, following 1905 revolution, the formation of trade unions and factory committees were allowed. Now these were the events and the result of the 1905 revolution. Now from what we just learned, there are few questions which may appear from this section of our learning. Now let's look at these questions and try to understand what their answers or how you could answer them from what we just learned. Why were there revolutionary disturbances in Russia in 1905? So basically this question asks, why did the 1905 revolution take place? So in the answer you will write that there was in 1904 there was increase in prices and decrease in wages. The conditions of the workers who worked in the industries and in the factories were not good. They had a lot of problems like housing problems, sanitation problems. They did not have rights to vote. So they began to demand right to vote. They demanded a constitution. And now these were the reasons for which the revolutionary disturbances occurred in Russia in 1905. And what were the demands of the revolutionaries? So the people who took part in 1905 revolution, what did they demand? They demanded reduction in working hours. They asked that their long working hours be reduced. The second demand they made was increase in wages, and the third demand was improvement in their working conditions. So these were the demands of the revolutionaries. And the third question that you may be asked from this particular section is to write few lines on Duma. Now I told you that Duma was an elected parliament. And who formed this elected parliament? The ruler of the Russian Empire, Tsar Nicholas II, formed Duma or an elected parliament following the events of the 1905 revolution. Now this Duma was quickly dismissed by the king or the Tsar, but it existed, it continued to exist. And by the third Duma, there were three Dumas which were established by the king. The first two, after its establishment, they were quickly dismissed. And the third one, after the pressure of the people, it continued to exist. But what did the king do? instead of bringing representatives from various sections of the people, he only brought the conservatives to represent in the Duma. Now, if you remember, the conservatives were the ones who did not agree to the liberals' changes or the radicals' changes, but instead they said that, okay, little change may be all right in the society, but these changes has to be slow in process. Slowly these changes could be brought, and even if the changes were not brought, they were completely okay. So this are the lines that you can add to write about the Duma.
Now subscribe to Bright Tutee course at ₹1 per day only. Download Bright Tutee app from Play Store and get the online courses prepared by competent and experienced teachers for different education boards of classes 6 to 10. Bright Tutee courses are available for the subjects of Math, Science, Social Science, English and Hindi in English and Hindi medium. Bright Tutee follows 3-step approach, that is learning, assessment and exam preparation. In learning, topic-wise video lectures with explanation of concepts and discussion of textbook examples and questions are available with the solutions. In assessment, topic-wise online MCQ test, practice assignments and chapter-wise question bank are available with the solutions. In exam preparation, previous year's question papers, sample papers and model test papers are available with the solutions. Sign up today on Bright Tutee and avail your courses at affordable prices.